We're going to get into Bellator versus UFC, UFC versus Bellator, champ versus champ from 145 pounds up to 265 pounds. Now, before we get into it, you can see from our graphics, we're going to have a tail of the tape from every single one of these divisions. You can compare and contrast. Sometimes it's actually going to be interesting to look at height and reach, especially at 145, 155, I've noticed. But we've got 125 pounds and 135 pounds in the UFC, kind of in Bellator. We've had 125-pound fights, but no champ whatsoever. But at 135, we've got a vacant belt. We had Darrion Caldwell, then Kyoji Horiguchi, and now nobody. And it's going to be interesting to see how that fills in. So let's play kind of a game of what if before we get too far into this at 135 pounds. So I will assume that you're probably going to get a mixture of either James Gallagher, Patrick Mix, or Patchy Mix, or Sergio Pettis at 135 pounds fighting for the belt. Who out of those three would you take as your champ?
Okay, if the question is who there has the best chance of beating Henry Cejudo, I would say Patchy Mix.
So would I.
Okay, but if I think Sergio Pettis would probably beat Mix if they did end up fighting. I know that's a bit of a hot take. It's just if we look at how good Pettis looked in his one and only Bellator fight, Patchy Mix gets hit. That's the one thing. Even though he is ungodly on the ground, like his jiu-jitsu is so next level, it's not even funny. If the fight stays on the feet for any period of time, Pettis probably knocks out Gallagher. I think we can both agree to that much. Or he at least beats him at the very least. And then it would come down to Mix or Pettis. And then really, I don't think you could pick a wrong winner out of those two. I think they would fight to about 5-5. They fought 10 times. But I would personally just go with Pettis. And then we have seen the Pettis and Cejudo fight not that long ago. So I would have to side with Cejudo. But.
And I would take Mix over Pettis. And I think the Mix Cejudo fight's a lot more of a fun fight just because you have to worry about the grappling. You have to worry about the striking too. I mean, it's a really interesting matchup. I don't know what the odds would be. I think they probably favor Cejudo a 2-1 or more.
Probably.
But I think, even just throwing those odds out there, it would probably be a closer fight than that. Do you think there'd be a finish in that one or go to decision?
I think Cejudo beats them pretty. Here's the thing. It's hard to say really how good Cejudo is because he fought a really close fight with the greatest ever, and I did think he won, to be completely fair. And then he fought Marlon Moraes and kind of had the perfect game plan. He got hurt a few times in that fight, but he just wore him out. And then that pressure of Cejudo kind of made him wilt at a certain point. And that might not be the same for everyone, but we saw what he was able to do to Sergio Pettis, to Demetrius Johnson, to Marlon Moraes. Patchy Mix is beat. You're
also forgetting a guy that a lot of people are forgetting, TJ Dillashaw, 125.
Yeah, exactly. And he knocked out TJ Dillashaw.
Totally depleted TJ Dillashaw. It was a weird fight. Like, I would discount that one quite heavily.
Even if we discount that one, though, the level of competition that Henry Cejudo's fought compared to those other three guys, I mean, Gallagher, that wouldn't even be a fight. I don't want to see that. Pettis, they fought, and Pettis was able, on the feet, he was a little bit better, but he just got taken down over and over and over and over again. And Mix does have a decent style against Cejudo, because even if Cejudo does go for takedowns, he's going to be a nightmare to hold down. Mix would be. I still think Cejudo would be able to get the win, just because if you're that good of a wrestler like Cejudo is, you can just hold a guy down, sap his strength, and then we saw the Cejudo who fought DJ. He's a really, really good striker, and he does not get tired. That's the thing he holds over a lot of other champions. It's just his absurd cardio, so I would still favor Cejudo no matter what.
Yeah, and I think Patchy Mix is probably your next champ at 135. I could see it, and I know what's been said in the media, and James Gallagher has called out Sergio Pettis if he's able to beat Cal Elnor.
I don't want that.
I think that probably you'd have Sergio Pettis able to win that fight, because on the feet, easily Pettis. And even against wrestlers, he's had decent success.
Okay, he has decent success. He's okay at getting back up to his feet. He's not good at defending the first takedown shot. He's good at, he's kind of got like that Michael Bisping defense, not nearly as good, but he'll get taken down, he'll get his back to the cage, and that's how he gets back up. And he's really good at that. It's when he gets taken down in the open mat, like Cejudo was able to do it to him 100 times. Cejudo would grab a single leg, pull up on it, trip out his back leg, and then just hold him down. And that would be kind of the game plan.
So if we move ahead, we actually have a champ versus champ matchup here at 145 pounds. You got your double champ, Patricio Pitbull, taking on Alexander Volkanovski. Now, Matt, this is interesting because Volkanovski coming in at 145, he only has the one championship fight against Max Holloway where he was able to win the belt. He's fought before, tough competition all the way up through. Win. Exactly. And one of the things that was crazy to think of when I was researching this, he fought at UFC 221 against Jeremy Kennedy. It seems to me like Jeremy Kennedy had been out of the UFC for quite some time.
He put a beating on Jeremy Kennedy in that fight.
He did. So Alexander Volkanovski taking on Patricio Pitbull at 145. He's been champ longer than he has at 155, but this should be a good matchup. Matt, you've got a guy in Alexander Volkanovski that can really fight wherever.
Exactly.
Good wrestler, good forward pressure. Patricio Pitbull, what does he do well to counter that from Volkanovski?
He has lightning reflexes and bricks in his hands. Here's the problem, though. Patricio Pitbull fights a lot like Jose Aldo, or prime Jose Aldo, if you will, does. Of course, he doesn't throw as many leg kicks, but still, absurd Muay Thai, really good takedown defense. Into the fight does go to the floor. They've got phenomenal jiu-jitsu, so they can work their way back up to their feet or go for submission, whatever you need. Volkanovski's amazing at taking your best talents and just removing them from you. He's kind of got this bit of a rap as Korean Zombie calls him a boring fighter all the time. And if we're comparing him to the Korean Zombie, I'm pretty sure 99% of people would be boring fighters, but we kind of think of his last two performances against Holloway and Aldo, the two best fighters he's ever fought. They were the most exciting fights. But when you go before that, when we do talk about...
That Chad Mendes fight.
Exactly.
Like, wow.
Chad Mendes fight, one of the best fights of last year. The Jeremy Kennedy fight was an absolute bludgeoning. Darren Elkins, I know he's just kind of a tough guy at this point in his career, but the absolute beating that Volkanovski put on him in that fight was absurd. He dropped him 3 or 4 times during that fight. I just think... And here's the other thing, too. Stocky guys who throw big power never have good cardio. Alexander Volkanovski can go all day.
Like and Patricio Pitbull hypothetically could as well, and they're kind of, similar in that regard. I mean, you can see it from the tail of tape, 5'6" versus 5'5", 71.5-inch reach versus 65.5, which that's going to play a big factor when we go up to 155. But at 145, I think this fight, now, we're alluding to 155, so let's mention it. You're going to have Khabib versus Patricio. But in this fight, Patricio Volkanovski, I think this one's a lot closer. Stylistically, I think it's a good matchup. And you had mentioned, too, Alexander Volkanovski, Chad Mendes. That was such a fun fight because it was like 1A, 1B. Who's the better wrestler? Who's the better striker? What are we going to get? And yeah, you had Mendes coming off a win over Miles Jury, which...
Big win, though.
Big win, exactly. So what are we going to get here? Are we going to get the old Chad Mendes, or are we going to get Chad Mendes that had like a year and a half, 2 years off, taking on a guy who matches up so well against him? And it was Volkanovski that blew the doors off.
Volkanovski's got a chin, too. I mean, Chad Mendes blasted him with overhand rights that would put most people to sleep. Volkanovski did go down, but the second he got right back up, he started waving in Mendes, and then was able to take him out pretty quickly after. I will say that this is one of the closer championship fights we have between the organizations. I don't think Volkanovski loses, though. Here's the thing that you will notice, and we've kind of talked about it a little bit. The UFC champions as a whole are just a lot bigger than the Bellator champions are. And I know that a lot of that has to do with just, the UFC has a lot more deeper divisions than Bellator does.
And we have 2 champs as well.
Exactly. And Patricio is primarily a featherweight. I know in the next one, him and Khabib, the size discrepancy is going to be absurd. But I just feel like the defensive capabilities of Alexander Volkanovski are really going to play a big dividend in this fight. He does a lot of what Juan Archuleta does, just so much better. Like, he's a really good volume guy. He doesn't get tired. He's got a good chin. But he's got knockout power, and if he really wants to, he could just go for single legs, take you down, and then ground and pound you all fight. So, although I think the odds would be pretty close, I would only see Volkanovski's maybe a minus 220. I do think he would win.
Yeah, I think Volkanovski would win as well, and you got to take those 2 fighters that Patricio's fought last. So Juan Archuleta, and even at 155, Michael Chandler. You look at Alexander Volkanovski, you can match him up quite well against both of those fighters, too. I mean, they're not the champ, but still, he plays into a lot of things that Patricio does well, but I think with the forward pressure, the wrestling, the takedown ability, and he can get on top and keep him down, that's why I would take Volkanovski and favor him here.
The easiest comparison for Volkanovski, he's a Michael Chandler who still has a really good chin. That's basically what he is.
And can fight at 145 pounds.
Exactly.
So if we move up, now we have Khabib Nurmagomedov and Patricio Pitbull. So in terms of records, some of the better records you had
100%.
in this division in MMA, you got 28-0 versus 30-4. You've got 5'10 versus 5'5, which is crazy to think of. Then you also have 70-inch reach versus 65.5. Now, you had 71.5 for Volkanovski, 65.5. So for Patricio to get a win here, he has to get in. He has to get inside distance, which is something that typically at 155, Khabib, you look at him and you think in the cage, maybe he's not one of the bigger guys, height and reach wise, but realistically, he is, and he's wide. A big guy. He is wide, and I'm going to throw this one in there too. Personally, actually standing next to Khabib, and there's a picture out there somewhere on the internet. That guy's friggin' big. Like, I mean, I was taller than him, but I'm not even close to his neck at all.
Well, you didn't wrestle bears when you were a child, though. You played baseball.
That's true. So with Khabib and Patricio Pitbull, this is where it gets interesting, because what would Patricio have to do in this fight to get a win?
Fake an injury. Oh, did I give that away too quick? Okay, here's the problem. You say he has to get inside. You're just doing Khabib's job for him. Khabib wants you to get inside. Khabib's going... Here's the thing. if you're a big guy at 155, if you are a Dustin Poirier, if you are a Michael Johnson and Edson Barbosa, guys who Khabib's had not an easy time with, but he's definitely kind of steamrolled a lot of those guys. Conor McGregor comes to mind too. They can have moments of success against him, but even those guys cannot keep that up for more than 2 minutes. Like, Dustin was able to get a few good combinations off. He got close with the guillotine, but that was it. And that's one of the best fighters in the world. Tony Ferguson's won 13 fights in a row, and we don't even know if he has a chance against Khabib. So a guy who's coming in, and let's be honest, once these guys rehydrate, Patricio's only going to get back up to like 160. He barely cuts weight to make 155. Khabib gets up to like 180, 185 by the time he gets into the cage. So the size discrepancy would be absolutely massive, and it would only take one takedown because A, the extra weight, the power that Khabib has over Patricio. Yes, Patricio is good jiu-jitsu, but his jiu-jitsu is not good enough to keep a big, strong guy like Khabib off you. And Khabib's kind of... He's not really a jiu-jitsu guy, but his grappling is just so high level, it's not even funny. I don't think this fight would even be close.
The only thing I can think of is you go back and you watch Khabib against late notice opponent that he didn't specifically train for, an Ally Quinta. That's it. That's the only thing I can think of.
Patricio isn't.
Yeah, I mean,
so
you'd have to do what you can in the scrambles. You'd have to do what you can on the feet and try and catch him with a big shot. And you saw Al was able to at least catch Khabib a little bit, at least hit him in the face.
Yeah, but like, that's my problem. This fight would be a minus 700 for Khabib, and even that I don't think would do it justice. Khabib would pick him up over his head, think of all the pain he's been through in his whole life, and absolutely spike Patricio on the ground. I don't think this is like even competitive.
So to recap, at 45, it could be a close fight between Volkanovski and Pitbull. I would favor Volkanovski. I could certainly see a path to victory for Patricio in that fight. At 155, I don't think it's close.
Unless his brother, like, they can do a tag team match, and even that, I don't know if they'd win.
Yeah, Patricio can come in and just throw bombs for a minute and a half and get tired and tap out. And then Patricio comes in and, like, almost like a kid. You know when kids kind of sit on a parent's foot and they just hold on and the parent walks them forward? That's what would happen in this fight. But I don't really see as clear of a path to victory for Patricio in this one. Now, this is the fight that you've all been waiting for. This is the fight that's in the thumbnail. This is a fight that...
I'm going to get some hate in the comments.
Yeah, I know where Matt's going with this one. Yeah. But you've got the Nigerian Nightmare, Kamaru Usman, taking on Douglas Lima, the Phenom. In terms of record, great records. And for Douglas Lima, too, a lot of those lumps came earlier on in his career. The Koreshkov fights, the Ben Askren.
He lost to Matt Brown. Like in 2010.
Yeah.
That's a fun fact for you.
Rory McDonald in 2018. And then it's just been dominance. Yeah. This is a guy that we've seen, even in the losses, he learns from them. And he comes out just that much stronger.
So Craig really likes Andrei Koreshkov. And
who doesn't?
He won one against Douglas Lima, and Douglas Lima won one against him. We were both really excited for that trilogy fight. And oh my goodness. Douglas Lima kicked his leg off, dropped him with an overhand right, and then choked him completely unconscious in the 5th round. And that might be the most violent way a person can get finished. Here's the thing, and I know I've been saying this for the last 2 weeks, I've been pumping up Douglas Lima's tires. I don't know if he beats Kamaru Usman. Kamaru Usman does everything at such a high level. There's not really a way that I can see anyone beat Usman for the time being. Because when you really think about it, does he have a chin? Yeah, he's got a phenomenal one. Is he good at wrestling? He's probably the best at it. Does he get tired? Not really. Oh, and does he have power? Yeah, quite a bit of it.
And if you look at Kamaru Usman striking versus Douglas Lima, so with Kamaru,
it's night and day.
It's pressure, it's volume, but also normally like a pressure volume guy, that's all they have. Yeah. But like you said, with Kamaru Usman, there's power behind it. You saw that with Colby Covington. He just continued to pour it on. And it's not like it was, death by 1,000 cuts. It wasn't just that. It was the fact that there's so much power behind those strikes. And then all right, did he break his jaw? Did he not? All right, let's say he did break his jaw, but he knocked him out and he won by TKO. Now, saying he knocked him out and he won by TKO, those are two different things, but he finished him and he got the win there in the 5th round to keep his belt. Now, for Douglas Lima, it's a totally different striking system.
It is.
It's a lot of power, but he certainly mixes it up a lot more. And he doesn't have to be on, forward pressure. He can do it on the back.
100%. Douglas Lima is kind of like a sniper. He's going to wait, and he's going to wait. But when he does finally decide to shoot, like, if you're in front of him, you're going to get hurt. Rory McDonald's legs have just never been the same. He openly admits, like, waking up in the morning, he can feel it was going to rain the next day, just because that's how bad his legs are at this point. And Lima, if you actually go, he's got one of the better highlight reels in all of MMA. Look how hard he hits things. And here's the thing. Half his wins are by knockout, the other half are by submission, and I think there only might be 4 decision wins. Kamaru Usman, I know he got a finish in his last fight, and he does have good power. He's not necessarily a finisher. And that's the only thing that I could see Douglas Lima being able to take advantage of. Lima only has to be perfect, kind of the Deontay Wilder thing. Lima has to be perfect for 2 seconds. Usman kind of has to be perfect for 25 minutes. Just because the power of Douglas Lima, let's say Usman has a 9 out of 10 on a power scale. Lima has at least a 15. It's kind of overkill, you know what I mean? And that might be his detriment because he loads up on a lot of his shots. And when he does load up, Usman should be able to take him down. The X factor, though, is leg kicks, just because wrestlers either A, catch the kick and take them down, or B, don't check them at all. And there's not much of an in-between. Like, those are the only 2 differences we ever see with wrestlers. Now, if you want to go from, let's say, the Tyron Woodley fight, Tyron Woodley doesn't check leg kicks very well. He throws really hard leg kicks, not great at checking them. So maybe Lima would be able to take advantage of that, cut down Usman a little bit, take away some of his explosive power, and then look for the knockout submission later on. And as good as Douglas Lima is, he would definitely be an underdog in this fight. He'd probably be that 2-1. It wouldn't be crazy. There wouldn't be a wide discrepancy, but Usman would definitely be the favorite.
See, this is where it gets kind of weird for me, because if you look at this, I picture Douglas Lima, I hold him in such a high regard, and I think if he came into the UFC at 170 pounds, like...
He's knocking out good fighters.
Well, yeah, let's go and name a few, because we've been on this welterweight train. So, Leon Edwards. I would favor Douglas Lima in a fight over Leon Edwards. Tyron Woodley, right now... If it was
this gonna hurt Craig to say.
No. If it was Tyron Woodley that fought like Robbie Lawler and just absolutely poured it on him, knocked him out, looked awesome, even in the Wonder Boy fights let's go way back. Let's go way back. Let's go Josh Koscheck, the guy that was just forward pressure, knocking people out, and Douglas Lima fought that guy. That would be a close fight. If it was Tyron Woodley today, I don't really know, because even recently we had Tyron Woodley, Darren Till, where he looked absolutely amazing. But let's say today... It's like a 1B Tyron Woodley. I think Douglas Lima has a damn good fight against him.
Woodley doesn't have a very good style to fight Lima, just because he likes to wait too. And if you're playing that game against a guy who kind of does it at the highest level, because let's get this clear, Duke Rufus is one of the best striking coaches in the world. Duke Rufus still can't do what Phuket Thai team or top team can do in Thailand. That's where Douglas Lima's training every day. He's running in the Thai mountains. He's kicking down banana trees. And if you're waiting on him to do something, you're always going to be trying to wait to counter. And if he does start to get up with those leg kicks, you just lose your power. That's the problem. If you can't push off on your legs, that's why leg kicks are so devastating. And we see them a lot more in today's MMA than we used to. It's such a small thing, but it's like putting money in the bank and it's just interest for later. You're really not going to pay dividends and you're really not going to get the effect out of it until that 4th and 5th round. But when it does start to take effect and you're fighting a guy who can't push off like he could in the first 3 rounds, it's such a night and day difference. It's not even funny. As much as I want to say Douglas Lima would go out here and head kick Kamaru Usman, I think Usman would be able to win a decision, but I could see this if Lima ever does come to the UFC, and please make it sooner rather than later. I could see them fighting multiple times, having both guys win. But this is kind of what everyone thinks of, I think, when they do think, okay, if a Bellator champ fought a UFC champ, who would have the best chance? And I do think Douglas Lima, out of anyone, has the best chance to beat a UFC champ.
The other thing because I'd love to see this fight happen. It's not going to, because Douglas Lima re-upped with Bellator, so it's never going to happen.
If I was an eccentric billionaire, though.
But if it were to happen, I think Douglas Lima, and this is where I was going from the start, I think Douglas Lima would probably get the path that Justin Gaethje got. I think you get one of those top guys, so that's why I bring up like an Edwards, even Jorge Masvidal.
What if he fought Gilbert Burns?
Gilbert Burns, I don't think, because they're buddies, I don't think that fight would happen.
Masvidal would be a lot of fun, and their styles are kind of similar, so it'd be really interesting to see, okay, the winner of that would probably be the best striker, if you will, in welterweight, and then they could fight the champion. That would be awesome.
And then the other thing for me, you talked about it, I think the Bangkok readiness of Douglas Lima versus... I mean, you can say the Wisconsin readiness. You could say the, Coconut Creek readiness of Kamaru Usman. Certainly favor Douglas Lima there. Now, it would be a really close fight, and this is one of the things in that tail of the tape there that I was actually surprised by. So I went back and watched a bunch of Douglas Lima fights. I watched the Koreshkov fights. I watched the Ben Saunders fight. I watched... Oh, God.
That's murder on TV.
I wanted to make sure that I was right when I wrote this down, because on Tapology, I'm pretty sure it says Douglas Lima's reach is 74.5.
Yeah.
No. Everywhere else, it's 71-inch reach, which is really surprising for such a tall guy to have such a small reach. It is weird, because you think of him as maybe a rangy guy, but you can see in the picture, not the longest of arms.
He's not.
Maybe not Sean Shirk long, but still.
Short.
He's able to utilize them quite well. That's the point I'm trying to make. It doesn't matter what that reach statistic is. He's able to utilize it as well as the rest of them. And I'd be curious to see a leg reach stat as well if you got them from Bellator, because that's one of those things that he does quite well, like you said. And then the other thing that I wanted to point out, you talk about the power, you talk about the fact that he can wait and pick his shots. That MVP fight. In the first round, you might have thought, oh boy, like MVP's coming off the Paul Daly win. Here we go.
He looked good too.
And he did look good. and then he slipped, and you'll see it. I see it in fights all the time, and I put my casual hat on, and I think
He goes, punch him.
I say punch him, or you'll see somebody miss like a spinning shot, or they go for a leg kick and they miss it, and they do like a little pirouette, and you don't think anything of it. And I think to myself, in a casual hat, why aren't you taking him down? Like, or why are you punching him? Why aren't you doing it? Douglas Lima, wait, up. And he wasn't all the way up, and he wasn't all the way down. He waited till that perfect spot to hit him and absolutely send him flying. And Kamaru Usman wouldn't put himself in a position like that. You know he wouldn't, because he's too polished of a striker. He has a lot more tools in his tool belt, but also the fight IQ for Kamaru Usman. He wouldn't be here on top of the biggest stage if he wasn't the best welterweight right now.
I'm going to go as far as say Kamaru Usman for me is the top 3 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. I really do think that highly of him. We've never really even seen him in danger in the UFC. Yes, he's had some less than exciting moments. The Emil Mack fight wasn't too great. A lot of people like to make fun of him for the 30%, but like...
Even the Douglas Lima fight.
What?
Or not Douglas Lima, sorry, Damian Maia fight.
Yeah, in the Maia fight, Maia did take his back, but still, he did just dominate Maia, and he dominated RDA. Like, we've really never seen him in that many compromising positions. I know he lost by guillotine way early in his career, but still, this Kamaru Usman, has no real big holes in his game plan, or in his game in general, so I just don't see how any fighter could beat him. This is nothing against Douglas Lima. I don't know how Jorge Masvidal beats him. I don't know how Colby Covington would beat him. I don't know how Santiago Ponzinibbio would beat him. I don't know how anyone beats Kamaru Usman at this point. This is how highly I think of him. Because if he wants to go full Khabib mode, he could. If he decided one day, I'm just going to take people down and ground and pound them, he could do that and still be one of the best in the world. Or he could do what we saw in the Covington fight. I can just stand with people. Here's the one problem, though. If he decided to have that same type of game plan against Douglas Lima, Colby Covington was able to hit Usman with some pretty good shots. If Douglas Lima hits him with those similar shots, the outcome would not be the same.
If you're backing up Douglas Lima with pressure, all he has to do is kind of wait, bob, and weave, and throw the hooks. Or throw whatever he wants, really. Kitchen sink, leg kicks to slow you down, which you know that Kamaru Usman's knees are an issue, so you never know how that fight would go. This, of course, it's a thumbnail picture for a reason. Exactly. This is probably the closest fight out of any of them. And I know a lot of people you can either discredit or give a lot of shine to Douglas Lima. And you can say, too, oh, well, the best champions are in the UFC. And maybe that's going to be a theme here.
Fight.
Maybe it's not. But I think this is the closest fight. I think in terms of the odds, it's weird because Lima would probably have to fight one of the top contenders and then get the title shot. And if that happened and he was able to win in impressive fashion, I think the odds would actually be quite close. If this was just straight up right now, champ versus champ, I think they'd probably be about a 2-1 type of odd. Yeah. And I'd be remiss if I would say, and again, I picked the fights and don't bet on them, but I would be, I think you'd be crazy not to take Lima.
If Douglas Lima's a 2-1 underdog, you should definitely take him on that. Of course, this fight's never going to happen, but this is like the fun in just breaking it down. Lima has a lot more experience, too. He has twice as many professional fights. You can say that's positive or negative, just kind of depending on how you look at it. But this, and I know we've said this 100 times, this isn't just the best UFC versus Bellator. You couldn't find another champion in any other organization who could go up against the UFC champion and have this much of a chance to beat them.
And we broke it down out of all the fighters that aren't in the UFC, who would be, the best welterweight, the best fighter that we could add in, whatever. You throw Roberto Soldic in this fight, and take Lima out, put Soldic in. That'd be a fun fight, but I think Lima, again, way more tools, way more ready for a fight like this than a guy like Soldic is, and this just is one of the better ones. Now, the last thing I want to say about this fight, let's say if we had a tag team of brothers, I think the Usmans between Muhammad and Kamaru would beat the hell out of Diego and Douglas.
Yeah, Diego wouldn't have much of a chance in that, but no, that, again, if any of these fights could be put together, this is the one that I would really like to see happen.
So let's move up to one that's also very interesting. I like this one at 185 pounds because you have the current UFC champion, Israel Adesanya, taking on Gegard, the Dreamcatcher Mousasi. And in terms of Mousasi, now I wanted to say the Moose because he's had a couple different nicknames, but Gegard Mousasi, to me, just outside of the cage, seems like the most nonchalant human being I've ever seen or heard or watched an interview of in the entire world. But when he fights, it is not that way at all. Now, it's been weird. Here's where I'm going with this. It's been weird in Bellator because he's had some good performances. He's had some pretty laid-back performances. Even in the Rory McDonald fight.
He's had one good performance.
Nah, that's true. Even in the Rory McDonald fight, it was kind of like, all right.
Just didn't really care.
But that's what's going down. For Israel Adesanya, you can say a couple different things because every fight up until he fought Yoel Romero was like highlight reel. It was fight of the night. It was fight of the year type contender. And then the Yoel Romero fight wasn't that great, but he held on to his belt, and that was the knock against Tyron Woodley for quite a while. You know, he fought.
But Woodley did it multiple times, and he would talk about doing it. The good thing about Adesanya, though, is every time he's in the media, he's like, no, I want to knock these guys out. And nothing against Tyron Woodley. I'm actually a Tyron Woodley fan. He doesn't make many fans in the media. Like, he's not great at articulating the ideas that he has sometimes.
But he's great at rapping.
Exactly. Oh, one of the best rappers ever. I really highly recommend you go check out T. Wood's rap collection. But Adesanya's just one of those perfect guys, marketing-wise, who he really understands how he can talk to not only the hardcore fans, but the casual ones as well, just to kind of get as many people on board as possible. And it's fun that you brought up the contrast in just not only styles, but just kind of the fighters themselves, because Gegard Mousasi, like you said, he's got like the Karolina Kowalkiewicz attitude going into a fight. Now, of course, they're very different levels, but he just kind of, it's just another day for him. And I find that really interesting because I do think that a big thing of what Adesanya brings to the cage is there's just kind of a pressure that comes with fighting him, because you know every time he's fighting, there's so many people who are going to be watching it. For instance, the Whittaker fight, they fought in front of about 60,000 people. The pressure that you would feel fighting a man in a cage in front of 60,000 people would be absurd. And if this fight did take place in one of those massive soccer stadiums in, you know, New Zealand, Australia, Gegard Mousasi, it wouldn't be any different. He could be fighting there, or he could be fighting at his local 24-hour fitness. Like, it doesn't make a difference to him.
Oh, okay. Here we go.
Exactly.
It's time to fight. Now, this is the one thing that, listen, I know where we're probably going to, we haven't talked about this
That's
one beforehand.
Knock him out.
I know where we're probably going to go with it. This is the weird kind of X factor to this fight. Gegard Mousasi's time in the UFC, it was good. I mean, his only losses were to the best of the best.
Uriah Hall.
Before he left, he started with a win over Talis Leites in his win streak, and he ended with Chris Weidman, and it went up from Leites all the way up through the division. He was beating Thiago Santos. He was beating, like, some of the best fighters that are still in the UFC. Vitor Belfort. And then the Weidman fight. Now, the Weidman fight was weird because he had his hands down, there were the knees, and it counted as a knockout, but still, Gegard Mousasi was a hot commodity, and that's why Bellator scooped him up.
Exactly.
It was that culmination of the wins, but also the fact, former Strikeforce champ, former Dream champ, like, this guy has been there and done that, Gegard Mousasi. He's not and I talked about this earlier this week, so that's why it's still fresh in my mind, but, you know, Chris Cyborg right now, she's got the Grand Slam championships. Gegard Mousasi's got 3, so if he was able to go to another organization and win 4, there you go, you get your Grand Slam champ. But Gegard Mousasi's fought and beaten some top competition. He's fought some of the best, not just at 185, not just at 205, but at 265. He fought Mark Hunt back in, it was Dream, or it was K1.
A minute ago. He beat him by armbar, though, which is impressive.
So it's just weird, and you look at his record, it's insane to think 46-7-2 versus 19-0. This is the now we got to get into the fight. So Israel Adesanya, he's going to have height and reach advantage. You know that. Gegard Mousasi, I would favor him certainly with the takedown, with the clinch work. Not so much there. But if it was able to get to the ground, that would I would think that would have to be the path of victory for Gegard Mousasi.
But here's the thing: if anyone gets Adesanya to the ground, that's what you assume. Yoel Romero went for one takedown attempt, and he kind of got Adesanya down, and Adesanya just popped right back up to his feet. Mousasi's not a good enough offensive wrestler to take the fight to the ground. I don't think at any point in this fight. Adesanya has phenomenal takedown defense, really good range too, so he's never going to be close enough to you so that you can just reach down, grab a leg, and then that's going to be the fight. Adesanya's got some of the better striking too. Not only in the UFC, but just in any organization. He's a glory champion. He's a kickboxing champion. And he's one of the better ones around. So, Gegard Mousasi, in Bellator especially, we've seen him struggle with
Lyoto
Machida not that long ago. We saw him struggle. In most of his fights, really, the only one that he's been able to just walk right through was the Carvalho one.
Or the Rory McDonald
one. But this is the difference. There's kind of a caveat to all of his wins. In the Carvalho one, Carvalho's not good off of his back at all. Like, he's just straight up bad. And Mousasi was able to take advantage of that big hole in his game. In the McDonald fight, Mousasi looked to be 3 weight classes bigger than him. And then in his first fight in Bellator, whose name evades me, against Alexander Shlemenko, he barely beat him.
He arguably lost that fight.
Exactly.
I mean, Shlemenko, I had him winning 2 of the rounds. Plus, he damaged him so bad, it was surprising that the fight even continued because his eye was swelled up so bad. But it was a promotional debut. It was an old vet that a lot of people recognized, and Mousasi was able to get the win and vault himself again into title contention. So, Mousasi with the big win streak, Adesanya currently with a big win streak. Now, Mousasi, the win streak has since ended.
Here's the thing with Mousasi. a knockoff Adesanya was able to jumping wheelhouse kick him and then knock him out with a flying knee. If Uriah Hall is able to get a lot of those techniques off on you, Israel Adesanya is definitely going to be able to get those same techniques off on you. He's just a faster and a lot smarter fight IQ-wise Uriah Hall. Really, when you boil it down, that's what Adesanya is. He's Uriah Hall with the fight IQ and with the takedown defense, two things that Hall was just never able to shore up. So Adesanya, I do think, would just walk through Mousasi. Mousasi struggled with Rafael Lovato Jr., who's a very good fighter. He's a good fighter. He's not, in my mind, at least a championship quality fighter. I don't see Lovato Jr. beating anyone in the top 10 in the UFC. I do think Mousasi could be a top 10 guy. He could have a lot of fun fights in the UFC. It's just this matchup in particular is a really hard one for him. He beat Machida by split decision in his last fight, and Machida is kind of a shell of what he used to be. So again, you're fighting all these guys who have kind of a similar style to Adesanya, and you're having a hard time with them. Then the guy who has that perfect style is going to beat you.
So I would favor Adesanya in this fight. I would think if you were going to get odds on it, I was thinking 3-1. I was also thinking like minus 450, somewhere around there. I think that would be, more or less fair, just based on, again, your last fights. Yoel Romero, Lyoto Machida, 2020 Lyoto Machida, who, listen, in his fight against Carvalho, like, he looked good.
He didn't even look bad against Mousasi. It's just the level of competition ever since the Mousasis left the UFC, it hasn't really been close. Israel Adesanya's fought top guy after top guy after top guy. He knocked out Robert Whittaker. I don't think people put as much weight behind that win as they should. He knocked out a guy who many saw was one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world in front of 60,000 people. The stage can't even get big enough for Adesanya. I don't see a single way this fight would go where he doesn't win.
Now, 205 pounds gets interesting because this is the first and only fight that this would be a rematch. We've already had this fight, and it was on Jon Jones' way up. Really, it was. It was quite some time ago against Ryan Darth Bader. Now, Matt, it's an interesting one because, for one reason, Ryan Bader, a guy who, since he's joined Bellator, has gone on an absolute tear. And for Jon Jones, it's just been a continuance of a tear, really. I mean, listen, the one loss, okay, the illegal elbows against Matt Hamill, the one no contest,
beat him.
The one no contest against Daniel Cormier. Now, in terms of, height, size, whatever, you've got Jon Jones with a huge reach advantage that he always has. He's going to have a height advantage. For Ryan Bader, honestly, in 2020, it'd be hard for him to get back to 205. Now, currently, he has his first fight in light heavyweight booked against Vadim Nemkov, and he hasn't fought at 205 in forever. It's been about, 2 years, 2.5 years. So for Ryan Bader to come back to 205, it's happening. It's in the works. Now, before at heavyweight, he fought around 135, somewhere around there, and he packed on a lot of muscle. So to get to 205, it will be tough for him. Now, he's had a lot of time to do it, but it will be tough for him. But he's taken on Jon Jones, one of the best to do it. Now, this is probably the best time for Ryan Bader to take 100%. On Jon Jones right now because there's so much controversy around Jon Jones. Is he still the Jon Jones that beat the tar out of Ryan Bader the first time? Or is he the Jon Jones that we've seen against Santos, against Dominic Reyes, against Anthony Smith? He looked pretty good, but still, against those guys. In this fight, that's the one thing I would say. In terms of odds, I think it'd be, about a 3-1 favorite for Jon Jones. Typically, even in most of the fights that he's in, he's even more than a favorite, 4-1, 5-1, 6-1. I think this fight is somewhat close. It would just depend on if we get that Jon Jones, the one of now.
So here's my thing with Jon Jones. Ryan Bader, to me, is kind of like Corey Anderson. If you really want a measuring stick, Ryan Bader, and Craig's not going to lie, he doesn't have a great chin. We've seen him get dropped a lot. He doesn't have a 16-1 record. He doesn't have a lot of things that you need to beat Jon Jones. You need good boxing, you need forward movement, and you need good cardio to beat Jon Jones. Those are things you need. You need good takedown defense. Takedown offense doesn't do anything because, if Daniel Cormier's not able to take down Jon Jones, Ryan Bader won't be able to. So all that wrestling, you're just not going to be able to use. It's mainly going to be a kickboxing fight. Ryan Bader, for as good of his striking has improved in Bellator, and it really has, it's improved against the likes of Kimbo Lawal, Fedor Emelianenko, guys who were really good, but their time really, that shine's gone. Let's just be honest. Jon Jones, yes, he struggled with, these newer athletes that he's fighting, but at least he is fighting these newer athletes, and he is always seeing these different styles, and he's fighting the next best guy constantly. Ryan Bader, he's fighting the next best guy, and this is nothing against Bellator. It's just those two divisions for Bellator aren't the deepest. Matt Mitrione, really?
The only
Kimbo,
two,
Fedor, they're just
yeah,
not
the
same
only
level.
guy I can say, and maybe fights him, I don't know, because he just got a win over Carl Albrechtsen, is Phil Davis. If we get that fight again,
They
but
just cancel each other out, really.
that's the thing. I mean, Vadim Nemkov is going to be the test, really, and it's just about one of the few guys other than Phil Davis, Albrechtsen, Nemkov. I mean, throw poor Liam McGarry in there.
I was gonna say Linton Vassell's fought all those guys before and lost them.
and now he's at 265. So this fight, while it is interesting, yeah, I would certainly favor the UFC champ, and I would. This is one of the fights that I would say this is probably one of the locks.
Oh, I don't know if I'd go that far. I just think John Jones has submission ability that Ryan Bader doesn't. And I do think that's what it would come down to. People really forget how good of a grappler John is because he only goes for striking and he doesn't really go for as many takedowns anymore. But him on top is... It's not Khabib-esque. It's a little different, but it's along the same ideas. If John Jones gets on top of you, you're stuck there. You're not getting up to your feet. You're not getting to the cage. He's got really good position, and if he's not doing 12 to 6 elbows, the fight's only going to end by either TKO or submission. So I do think John Jones, he just has more finishing ability than Ryan Bader. And I know Ryan Bader's been finishing people in Bellator, but traditionally Ryan Bader's more of, my cardio is really good, I've got really good wrestling, I've got, good enough striking to get to my wrestling, and then we'll see what happens by the end of the 5 rounds. But for finishing ability alone, John Jones.
Yeah, I don't think it would be like when Anthony Johnson fought Ryan Bader, but I think it would be more like, an all out, type of, decision type of fight where that cardio of Ryan Bader is going to play a factor. John Jones, with all of the different tools that he has, not just his wrestling's quite good as well. You can't forget about that. But yeah, I would certainly favor John Jones in this fight. It's certainly an interesting stylistic matchup in this one. And listen, if you put Ryan Bader, took him out of Bellator right now and put him into the UFC, would he be a top 15 guy?
Yeah, he'd be top 15, but I don't think Ryan Bader beats Dominic Reyes. I don't think he beats Tato Santos. I don't think he beats a lot of the higher level strikers because Ryan Bader's had this problem his whole entire career, and I have to bring it up every time we talk about Ryan Bader. He does not close distance well at all. Defensively speaking, he rushes in, and it bothers me to no end because Ryan Bader, if he just got rid of that small problem in his game, would be so much better in my eyes. But when you go back, and I know it was a while ago, but you can see it in every single one of his fights, just most prominent in this. And the Lyoto Machida fight, Machida just waited for him and waited for him and waited for him because he knew that if Ryan Bader wants to win a fight against him, he's got to close the distance. You can't stand on the outside with Machida and beat him. Even John Jones had to do the same thing. Like, Machida's just that good, striking on the outside. So he just waited because he knew Ryan Bader's so reckless in his approach, and lo and behold, what happened? Ryan Bader ran at him like this, and Machida just stepped back, hit him with a left, kind of Conor McGregor, Jose Aldo style, and completely flattened him. Now, not to say everyone's been able to take advantage of that hole in his game to the same level that Machida was able to, but it's still a problem that if you look closely, you can see in Ryan Bader.
Yeah, even if you watch recent Ryan Bader fights, it's him just pretty much bum rushing to get in there and then just throwing power shots, and he's been landing them. But if somebody was able to catch him, if Vadim Nemkov's able to back away and catch him with counter, Vadim Nemkov's pretty good at that. So listen, this fight right here, I would certainly favor Jones. We'd both be picking Jones in Fight Night Picks fashion, but it is a good stylistic matchup. And actually, I asked the question, and not that I had an answer in mind, but I think if Ryan Bader's in the UFC right now, I think he'd be a top 10 guy. Yeah. It's just he'd struggle against the Blachowicz, the Reyes, the Santos, even Anthony Smith.
Like Glover Teixeira, I think he'd have a hard time. That's where I would put Ryan Bader. Wherever Glover is in the rankings, I would put him around that level just because they do a lot of the same stuff. And I don't see either one winning a title, that's all.
So then we go up to 265 pounds, which I have the picture up here. We're going to disagree on this one. You got Ryan Bader, you got Stipe Miocic. Now, Matt, Ryan Bader had his time in the UFC, but it was all at 205 pounds, whereas Stipe Miocic, career heavyweight in the UFC. So this is where it gets interesting because we've seen Ryan Bader since he's gone to 265. And let's say he does weigh in around 235. Size-wise, now I've got it as weight as 265, so you know that it's heavyweight. But still, the fact of the matter is, Ryan Bader is just about the same size as Stipe Miocic in terms of size and thickness. They're about the same. Stipe's going to have the reach. Stipe's going to have the height. Where it gets interesting is, okay, so Daniel Cormier, Stipe Miocic, those fights are all-timers. Like, really.
Their second fight, please go back if you're on quarantine like we are. One fight you really have to watch is DC Stipe 2. I didn't remember how good of a fight that really was. I remembered it was good, but I went back and watched the whole thing. Few things. The cardio of Stipe Miocic is absurd. For him to be able to keep that work rate going into the 4th round and then just figure out what DC's kind of Achilles heel was, go to the body constantly, to make those adjustments on the call too. We don't see that too many times in fights. We see it a lot, like Joe Rogan will say, oh, he has to do this different, but you won't really be hearing it from your coaches, so you don't really want to take his word for it. But when a coach says do this, and Stipe's like, okay, I gotcha, and then he actually goes out there and does it, I know it seems simple and it's something that a lot of fighters would do. Fighters don't do it though. So if you're able to listen to your coaches and actually use their advice and turn it practical in a fight, I think that's absurd. And the power and the speed that this guy has for a heavyweight. Like, he moves like a middleweight. He's very light on his feet. He's got great cardio, got a wicked chin. There's not much Stipe doesn't have going for him.
No, this is why it's a really interesting fight, because we've had it here recently. We had the question that was asked, Curtis Blaydes, is he set for a long-term title reign? He could. It's just weird because he has these all-time greats in front of him.
Yeah.
And I consider Francis Ngannou to be an all-time great heavyweight. I mean,
all-time great intimidator.
Everybody considers, and this, I'm going to catch some hate here. Everybody loves Cain Velasquez. And everybody thought when Cain Velasquez came back that it was going to be the Cain of old. And Francis Ngannou shut down that conversation like no other. And Francis Ngannou, what he's able to do to opponents, it's insane. I mean, even Curtis Blaydes, like just knocking him down so hard. Not once, but twice. So it's weird because for Curtis Blaydes is good. Like, he's one of the best wrestlers out there. Not even a 265. He's such a great wrestler, such a good pure wrestler too. He can just take guys down at will. Not able to do it against Francis, but just about everybody else. And so if Curtis Blaydes fought Stipe, it'd be an interesting fight. It won't happen because they've trained together before and they don't want to fight each other. Curtis Blaydes doesn't want to fight Stipe. I'm sure Stipe would take whatever fight he gets.
He doesn't really care.
For Ryan Bader, it's interesting because I'm quite sure that he has a pretty good relationship with just about all the heavyweights in the UFC. I don't think
he doesn't like Daniel Cormier.
No, I don't think this fight would happen in particular. But Ryan Bader does a lot of things that Stipe does well. He does. He really does.
I'm listening.
He hits hard and he wrestles quite well. And his defensive wrestling is as good as his offensive wrestling. 100%. And you said the hole in his game is going forward too fast, which... Listen,
I'll Stipe knocked out Verdum moving backwards, evading shots, and then hit him with one and put him down.
In Brazil. I'll concede this,
keep going, though.
Stipe, if he's able to catch Ryan Bader on the way in, same thing as John Jones. If he's able to catch him on the way in, look at how he knocked out DC.
He knocks out... Here's my problem. Ryan Bader doesn't really have... Stipe has things that give Ryan Bader a lot of trouble in this fight. Ryan Bader has good takedown defense. He's not going to need it, though, because Stipe is more of a Chuck Liddell wrestler. I think that's just a term that I'm going to start using from now on. He only wrestles to keep the fight on the feet. He will go for takedowns on the occasion. And the Mark Hunt fight was a really good example. He knew Mark Hunt was very dangerous on the feet. Actually set a heavyweight record for most significant strikes landed in a fight in that one. And ended up TKOing him in the 5th round due to ground and pound. Because that's what Stipe can do. We don't see that side of him a lot. But when push comes to shove, he has to just go for takedowns. And the Francis fight, of course, that's a great example too. He weathered that early storm and then implemented his game plan. And he's one of the better fighters, regardless of weight class, of making those improvements on the fly. Ryan Bader does have good knockout power, but I don't think Ryan Bader hits harder than Francis Ngannou or Daniel Cormier. Ryan Bader's a really good wrestler. He's not a better wrestler than Daniel Cormier. And Ryan Bader has one thing that I just don't know about. I don't know what his cardio looks like at heavyweight. I know Stipe can go 50 minutes at heavyweight and act like it's no big deal with a high volume. That's the thing that people don't talk about. People talk about this guy has good cardio, this guy has good cardio, but they don't take into account what they're doing in the fight. So you can have really good cardio and only throw a few strikes and wrestle and stay on top of a guy. Your cardio's going to look really good because you're fighting at your pace. When you're fighting at Daniel Cormier's pace and he's throwing hundreds of significant strikes at you and you're staying there for every single one of them and then you're able to put him down, that shows that you have ungodly cardio. That shows that you're never getting tired. And Ryan Bader hasn't shown with all that extra muscle at 265 that he can go all 25 minutes.
We've seen him in the fights in the Bellator heavyweight Grand Prix where he was able to outlast certain opponents and he was able to knock guys out too. But again, who are the quality of opponents they face?
Exactly. He's beat Francis, Daniel Cormier, Fabricio Verdum, Alistair Overeem, Mark Hunt.
Never beat Fedor, though.
He never beat Fedor, and he never beat Stefan Struve. Those are the only two big marks against Stipe Miocic's career. Ryan Bader has also not beat Stefan Struve, but he did beat a 55-year-old Fedor. So I understand that you think this fight might be somewhat competitive. I would still have Stipe at a 5-1 favorite. I think Stipe is a way harder matchup for Ryan Bader than John Jones is because John Jones has good striking. He doesn't have good power. Stipe has good striking but great power, and that's something Ryan Bader's always had a problem with.
I think the line would be closer to like minus 280, minus 275, plus 220 for Bader. And listen, at those odds, I think they're pretty...
DC the first time they fought was around that much of an underdog against Stipe. That's all. So if DC's only a plus 200, then I would imagine Ryan Bader coming over from Bellator, knowing that in the UFC he's been knocked out more than one time, I would put him above 400.
Juicy.
That's all.
Juicy. But Matt, listen, like out of all of these fights...
Fun.
I think they're great. I really appreciate the question by Davi. That's an awesome one because, listen, we're always tuned in with Bellator. We're always tuned in to the UFC. And there's a lot of other questions that we're going to get to today. We might change our shirt so it looks a little different. But hey, we're going to get into them, and we really appreciate it. I mean, there's been a lot of people that have come out and said, hey, we like this segment with Parry Counter. And it's not something that we're just doing because there's nothing to talk about. Well, it is, but the point is we're going to keep doing this throughout the year. It's not just going to be a one-off thing. When we're still doing Fight Night picks, we're going to be doing Parry Counter. We're going to be taking your fan questions. And listen, the other thing that I want to say that I haven't thrown out there in the community tab, I haven't asked it as a question or put this out there, but we got somebody else joining our team coming up next week who actually I host a podcast with, and we're bringing that podcast over from somewhere else. So pretty interesting stuff there. We've got some neat ideas planned for Fight Night picks coming up in the future. Hopefully everybody enjoyed this edition of Parry Counter where we pitted Bellator champs versus UFC champs to see who is the ultimate champ. And in certain cases, you've got a champ versus a champ. Or there's a couple of different champs over in Bellator. So keep those questions going in the comments section. You can do it under any video. I check them and try to get back to as many people as I can. And listen, Matt, as we always say with Fight Night Picks, let's get into it.